All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Raw Intuition Health Show. Great to be with you again on this Sunday morning. Got a really exciting show today for you. It's a topic that I have been, very interested in over the last several years, ever since I did an extended water fast about 5 years ago. And one of the main takeaways that I got from that experience was to focus on the breath. It was just an intuitive message that I received, whether it was from God or just, my intuition. I just felt that I had to focus more on my breath. And I have been doing that, but not as much as I know that I should. So I came across a summit on somatic breathwork by Soma IQ. And our guest today, Adam, was the host, the facilitator, and I really connected with his energy and with his message and the way that he presented this topic. And so I wanted to bring him on. His name is Adam Carbary. He is a renowned somatic breathwork and life transformation coach. And we're going to dive deep into how breathwork techniques can help you build emotional strength, release trauma, reduce stress in your life, and just transform your life from the inside out. And so, really excited. Be sure to put your questions in the chat for, anything that comes to your mind as we're going through everything, and we'll get to your questions at the end of the show. Carl, what's up? Great to see you here. Thanks for being with us today. So let's bring Adam on to the show. What's up, Adam? Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Really excited to have this conversation today.
Likewise. Yeah, like I said, I really appreciated your energy and just the way that you presented the information. And so breath work is something that, I've always known, or at least, for the last 5 or 6 years, I've just known that it's something that can really help me as somebody that has always had issues with anxiety and, I would say self-worth, as I'm starting to do the inner work a lot more lately. That's what I'm starting to realize: my self-expression, self-worth, the anxiety that comes along with that sort of stuff is something that I am starting to work on much more intently than I have in the past. And so breath work, I feel like, is such a powerful modality to address some of those things. And so I saw your story that you shared on Instagram. I'd love to have you share that story with the audience today. But thanks for being here. I appreciate you taking the time and energy to share this message with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, breathwork for me is, as you said, I shared my story recently on Instagram after like a long time of like not really sharing the full story. Like I've shared bits and pieces throughout my journey that felt like relevant at the time. But recently I just felt like, you know what? I've had a lot of new followers recently, many of which are students that have gone through the trainings through Somatic. And I felt that it was like really important for people to recognize that like the person that they see today is not the person I've always been.
Mm.
And I share in our training that there is life before and after breath work, because who you are after you start learning to connect with your breath in an intentional way. And, many people that might be listening to this might be thinking of like, okay, like what is breath work? Like, why do I need breath work? I already know how to breathe. But the truth is, if we actually stop and we think about how we're breathing today to day, most people don't actually know how they're breathing.
Yeah.
They don't know if they're breathing in and out of their mouth all the time. They don't know if they're breathing at a rapid pace. They don't know if they're breathing deep or shallow. They don't recognize if that breath has pauses or holds or hitches as you're breathing in or out. And all of those things, all those subtleties give us information on where the body's nervous system's actually at.
Mm.
So people who are chest breathers, people who are mouth breathers, those are people who are stuck in chronic stress or in fight or flight all the time. Call it the sympathetic side of the nervous system. People who typically are inherently nose breathers, breathe deeply into their belly, have a very slow rate of breath. These are people who are actively in the rest and digest or the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. So when you can start to recognize where your breathing is at, you can actually start to recognize what space you're actually living from. And
Mm,
there's an interesting statistic that came out recently that 85% of the global population is living in a chronic stress state.
I believe it.
When I heard that, it was like mind blowing to think that only 15% of the population is actually living in regulation.
Mm,
And we wonder why the world is so stressed out. We wonder why the world lives in this hustle mentality of like, here it is in the Pacific Northwest. Winter is finally arriving. Temperatures are finally getting cold. The mountains are starting to get pummeled in snow. And yet, driving around yesterday, everyone is hustling and bustling as if it's still summer.
right.
And yet we wonder why we deal with adrenal fatigue. We wonder why we deal with anxiety, why we deal with depression, why we deal with constant fatigue and inflammation of the body. It's not only what we're eating, but it's how we're breathing.
Mm,
There is a really wonderful meditation and breathwork teacher that I had a beautiful conversation with on my podcast a few years ago named Scott Schwank.
mm.
And he shared something that was really profound that's just stuck with me up until this point, that how you are breathing is how you're living. So if you're breathing shallowly, you're living shallowly. And if you're breathing deeply, you're living deeply.
I love that.
And that in and of itself, if there's one piece that people can walk away from this conversation, it's that. To just remember that if you can slow your breath down a little bit, if you can deepen your breath into your belly a little bit, not to be belly breathing and mouth breathing all the time, not to be activating your system all the time, but being able to recognize when your breathing is being taken over by your body's autonomic nervous system versus whether you're consciously choosing how you're breathing in that moment,
Mm,
that one piece is going to radically change your life.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, it's nice that there's just these little knowings, these little practical tips that you're just starting us off with right away, because I think that's one of the things that keep people, and you would know this better than me, but I think people are maybe intimidated by the idea of breath work, and so they think it's more complicated than it is. So yeah, breaking it down like that is so helpful. So thank you.
Well, and to speak to that complexity, like at this point in time, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of breathwork modalities that are out there.
Sure.
And I would go as far as saying like they all have a time and place. Somatic breathwork, at least in the first half of the session, is loosely based off of holotropic breathwork, which is Stanislav Grof, bless him for bringing breathwork into the paradigm that it is now, where he was in the 60s where LSD was creating a lot of buzz around being able to help people with PTSD and really complex psychology diagnoses.
Mm,
But then when it was made illegal, he was like, okay, how do I continue this work without going through all of the red tape to find funding or to be able to actually get LSD? Okay, maybe I can do it through breathwork. And that's when he created holotropic breathwork, which holotropic breathwork is a 3-hour journey of full activated breathing the entire time. It is intense. And I would go as far as saying it's actually probably above and beyond what most people really need.
mm, okay.
Somatic breathwork, we look at it as it's a complete practice because we're working with both sides of the nervous system. We're activating the nervous system. We're triggering the sympathetic side of the nervous system, that fight or flight side in the first half. But then we're bringing it into rest and digest, into the parasympathetic in the second half. And by working with both sides of the nervous system, it's like being able to hit the reset button,
Mm,
discharge everything that's there. And by the end of it, you can come back into a regulated state and actually move forward with how you feel. In the first half, we call it the clearing rounds because you use a circular connected breath breathing in and out of the mouth and drawing it deeply into the belly so that you can discharge what the nervous system is carrying. There's a really fantastic book called The Body Keeps the Score
Yeah.
that really talks about it, how when we go through something traumatic, stressful, something that activates our system, if we don't have the right tools, the right capacity, the right knowledge, or the right support to be able to fully move through that thing and draw it from start to finish, which most of us really don't have that in our modern day. You know, we're just not given that language at an early enough age to know what to do with these big emotions when they come up. So what most of us do is we shove it down, we bottle it up, we numb it, we push it away in whatever way, shape, or form we can. First law of thermodynamics states energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it can only be transferred. So with that in mind, if emotions are just energy in motion, and when they come up, if we don't allow them to move through, then we're sticking them in our body. And so our body needs to take energy to hold on to that energy. And we refer to this as parasitic tension, where the energy that you're holding on to is constantly taking energy from your body. If there was only one thing that you were holding on to, probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But I'd go as far as saying most of us are probably carrying 10, 50, 100, 1,000 of these things in our body. And our body has finite energy. It doesn't have an unlimited capacity. On Friday, Stephen Jaggers, the creator of Somatic Breathwork, him and I did a live podcast for our community where we were talking about never wasting a trigger. And in that conversation, he brought up the analogy of our nervous system is like a memory card. It only has so much capacity. And when that memory card gets full, it has no more room to take on anymore. And yet, I don't know about you, but life continues to throw more at me every single day, whether I have the capacity for it or not.
Oh, yeah.
And so what breathwork does is it allows us to open up the files in that memory card. It allows us to look at what do we need to keep? What do we need to let go of? Now, here's one of the interesting things that happened in my life recently is my wife and I, we live on a little over 11 acres out in the woods. We've got a ton of wildlife. And so we have a game camera set up on our driveway to capture a lot of the wildlife that comes through. And a couple of times every single week, she's grabbing the card, popping in the computer. We're looking at, you know, the deer and the bobcat and the cougar and the raccoons and the possums and all the various different creatures that come through. And so she deletes those files, ejects the card, pops it back in, and we start over again. But last week, she checked the card and there were no new videos. And she's like, "Why? I don't understand." And so I opened up the information on the card and it was full, even though the folder on the card was empty. And it was because she never emptied the trash can on her computer and she never formatted the card. So even though the card seemed like it was empty, it was actually full. And this is a really good way of looking at the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And a top-down approach to healing, as modern day medicine, modern day psychology uses, where we analyze things, we talk about the stories, we maybe talk about the emotions that are coming up that are attached to those stories and events, but we never address the body. We never address the nervous system and what it's carrying. And that's like what clearing out and reformatting the card is all about. It's actually removing the systems that are in the subconscious mind that are affecting how we show up in the world, that are making us react in certain ways when we become stressed, when we become anxious, when we become triggered, instead of having the choice of how do we actually want to respond based upon what's happening right now. That's why, in my opinion, breathwork is one of the most powerful modalities that we can use, because it's utilizing the most powerful tool that we all have, which is free, our breath. The first thing we do when we enter this life is take a breath. And the last thing we do when we exit this life is take a breath. And everything in between is what sustains us. So if we can use that tool without any other substances in our body that are going to have their own agenda of where they're trying to take us, but instead being able to meet ourselves as ourselves with the breath, we can actually see what are we carrying in our body that we don't actually want to carry anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's making us show up in certain ways that maybe we don't want to show up anymore. And that's one of the beautiful things, is that it's such an easy thing to do, but to speak to your point that you brought up, it's something that so many people are intimidated by,
Mm-hmm.
because many people come to it as like, I've spent 10, 20, 30, 40 years of my life pushing this stuff away because I didn't want to feel it. And now you're telling me that in this hour-long breathwork session, I might feel all of this stuff.
Yeah.
But we only have one feeling dial. And if you turn down that feeling dial, you're not just turning down the feelings you don't want to feel, but you're also turning down the feelings that you do want to feel.
Mm. Good point. Yeah, that's so interesting. That's actually something that I was just thinking about earlier this morning. Um, I was wondering because, like I said, like 5 years ago, I really got interested in breath work after I did a water fast, and I was just like so into it, and I never, like, even today I still do it, but not enough. I know I don't do it enough. I haven't really delved too far into like specific practices. I just kind of do things here and there. And I was just like analyzing that this morning, and I think potentially it is like you just said, we've been pushing feelings and emotions down into ourselves and not expressing them for decades, most likely. And I was thinking maybe I'm afraid to expose myself back to, re-expose myself to those feelings and let those process like I need them to. And so yeah, it's just interesting that, it's possibly, maybe it's the subconscious trying to protect me from something that it thinks maybe is harmful, that I told myself was harmful and I just shoved down. And I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate to that. Just we stored them away for a reason, right? And
Yeah.
so not wanting to experience that is probably something with the subconscious trying to protect us. What do you think about that?
So there's a couple of different avenues that's happening here. Like, yes, it can be the subconscious, but I would go more so as far as saying it's the ego.
Yeah.
Because the ego inherently, its job is to keep us safe. The ego is designed to analyze, and the ego I look at as a being attached to our mind,
Mm-hmm.
our cognitive mind. It's the thing that's always thinking and analyzing. Whereas like our nervous system is the mind of the body. And so when we can reconnect our conscious mind to the mind of the body, this is what the Greeks referred to as living somatically. So somatics comes from the root word of soma, which stands for in the mind in relation to the body. Most of us are living from our minds. Most of us are thinking about, what does this feeling mean? Why am I feeling this way? The story that's attached to that. But in somatics, we flip that around. It's this bottom up approach where first we want to connect to, what are you physically sensing in your body? Like let's go of the attachment to anxiety as a definition. What are you physically feeling? Maybe that's an elevated heart rate. Maybe it's a slight shallowing of your breath, but an elevated pace of your breath. Maybe you're feeling tingling sensations. Maybe you're feeling a heightened sense of presence within yourself. Okay, let's actually connect to those sensations first. Finding out, where are these sensations actually located in the body? Okay, then let's take a couple of deep breaths and bring some fresh breath to those areas. And then move in one step more. Are there any emotions that are coming up based upon what you're physically sensing and feeling? Not trying to give definitions to them, not trying to attach them to any stories or anything, but just is there any grief that's there? Or is
Mm.
there any irritation? Is there any agitation? Is there any joy? Is there any nothing? Because that's also something too.
Mhm.
And then moving up to, are there any stories that are attached to those emotions, that are attached to those physical sensations? When we can start to map our body in that way, that's when we can actually begin to recognize the things that we're carrying are actually perpetuating the emotions that are perpetuating the stories. It's
Mhm.
not the other way around. So when we can discharge that energy out of our body, we can also discharge the emotion, and we can also discharge the story. And if we can let go of those stories, wow, life actually starts to become different, because in place of those stories that you purged, going back to that memory card, if you've cleared space on the memory card, you go from having 0 gigabytes of space to now you have 2 terabytes of space. Okay, what do you want to save in that space? Maybe you want to call in more abundance into your life. Maybe you want to call in more gratitude, more love, more joy, more presence, more authenticity.
Mm.
And those are the things that we connect to in the second half of the session. So it's like we get this opportunity through using our breath to clear out what it is that we're carrying, allow those emotions to come to completion. And the cool thing about a breathwork session, at least with somatic, I can't speak on every other breathwork modality because I haven't tried them all.
Mhm.
But with somatic breathwork, your body is such an incredibly intelligent thing that it's never going to ask you to experience or relive something you don't have the capacity to. And this is one thing that I hope will allow people to put the fear or the anxiety aside from attempting a breathwork session, to recognize that at least with somatic breathwork, you have your foot on the gas. You get to choose how deep you go into the session or how shallow you go into the session based upon how deep or shallow you breathe. I'm not forcing everybody to match each other's breath, because what might be a 4 for me might be a 10 for you.
Mm.
Or what might be a 4 for you might be a 10 for another person. So I don't want everybody breathing at the same pace.
Mhm.
I want everybody to find the rate of breath that works for them, because slow titration into the body is what's going to lead to lasting change. This mentality of like, I just want to go into one ceremony and blast myself into outer space and get rid of it all at once. Okay, sorry, but too much too fast just causes more trauma.
Yeah.
So when we can come at our own healing through these bite-sized chunks, recognizing that like breathwork sessions, I look at the same way as going to the gym or the
Mm.
same way as going to yoga. It's a practice. It's something that I'm meant to do all the time. I'm not necessarily going to do a full hour-long journey all the time, but maybe I'm doing a daily practice every day that's 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes.
Mhm.
So to go back to what you were saying about your own breathwork practice, and maybe you're not doing it as often enough, I'm curious, when you say I'm not doing it often enough, are you thinking more of like the journey style session where you're doing longer going in?
Yeah, that, and I think just studying it more, or just learning like actual techniques rather than just kind of winging it.
Yeah.
I think that's something that I've been drawn to do. I just, there's so many things that I'm trying to do that I've put it off, and I just like accept that, just doing the intuitive breath work, I guess, is, well, how I would describe it, is just um, kind of what I've defaulted to, rather
Okay.
than taking the actual time to sit down and learn from an expert like yourself on really the best way to do it for myself, that's going to give me the most benefit over the long term, I guess.
So, how about I give you and all of the listeners a practice that they can do every single day, and we'll just do it together, just a short condensed version right now, just for the sake of
Yeah.
time. But like, you can take this practice that I'm getting ready to show you, and you can extend it up to 15 minutes.
Okay.
I realistically, Anywhere from 3 minutes to 5 minutes is probably enough for this practice. As just the daily practice is really about nervous system regulation on a day-to-day basis.
Mm.
So if you're feeling really stressed out, if or you get home from work and you're just still carrying the stress of the day, maybe your boss yelled at you, maybe something happened, and you want to let go of that before you enter into your home, before you re-engage with your family. This is a great practice that you can just do in the car. And so
Right.
this is the same practice that we utilize within a full journey length session, just in a condensed form.
Okay.
So for the first, we're going to do roughly about 30 breaths. We're going to breathe in and out of the mouth, trying to draw that breath deeply into the belly. So you kind of feel your diaphragm expand in like 360 degrees like a balloon. So you should
Mm.
feel it in the front, the sides, and the rear of your spine. And you're trying to keep that breath in a circular fashion. So you're always breathing in or always breathing out. It's going to sound a little something like this. Maybe yours is a little bit slower. Maybe it's a little faster. Find the pace that works for you. It shouldn't feel too intense, but it should be a little faster than you normally breathe. We're wanting to kind of activate the system a little bit. Then after those 30 breaths, we're going to take 3 deep breaths in. We're going to hold it at the top of the third breath, and we're just going to hold that breath for as long as you're comfortable.
Yep.
Might be 10 seconds, might be 15, might be 30, might be 60, however is comfortable for you. Then we're going to switch to breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, still keeping it in that circular fashion, still bringing it deeply into the belly. And that's going to bring us into regulation. So let's go ahead and just, wherever you are, if you're in the car, don't do this practice because we are going to close our eyes. This is meant to be a little bit of an inward journey. So just find a comfortable position. You can do it seated or lying down, but just let's take a couple of deep breaths in, deep breath in through the nose. Slow out the mouth. Another deep breath in through the nose. Slow out the mouth, gently closing your eyes. Let's begin breathing in and out of the mouth, deeply into the belly. Using the breath to draw you into your body. Noticing if there's any tension or stress, and using the breath like a broom to sweep it out. That's it. Deep breaths. Just a few more deep breaths. Okay, now slowing down the breath, we'll take a deep breath in, letting it go. Another deep breath in, letting it go. Deep breath in, holding at the top. And connect to how you would like to feel in this moment. Bring it up. Let yourself feel it. And whenever you're ready to let that breath go, switch to breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Breathing in that feeling you just connected to. Using your breath to build it up within your body, to increase that feeling. how good can you let yourself feel? We're going to take 3 more deep breaths in. Deepest breath you've taken today. And just hold it there on the exhale. And whenever you're ready to take that next breath in, breathe in the feeling of gratitude. Gratitude for your body, your breath, and being alive for another day. Whenever you're ready, just open your eyes. Coming back and noticing how different you might feel now. How you feeling, Matt?
Feel good. That was great. Yeah. That's what I need to do more of. See,
Yeah,
that's what I'm looking for. So thank you.
yeah. And honestly, if I had to say, if anybody was going to invest more time and energy into any particular practice, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, like I love the journey. I love taking people through a full journey session and just seeing what they're able to move through and how they are before and after the session. And those are such phenomenal experiences. And I do wish that everyone experiences at least a full journey once in their life.
Mm.
But the daily practice, that's what's actually going to lead to the longest lasting changes because it's something that you're going to do every day. By being able to bring your intention into your breath at least once in a day, even if it's only for 2 or 3 minutes, that stacks on top of each other. It's just like a yoga practice or going to the gym, right? Like the more consistent you are with it, the more gains you make in the long run because you're building upon what you did yesterday.
Sure.
If you're only doing a journey session every couple of months and then you're not doing anything in between, that's not going to make as big of an impact as if you did a daily practice every single day,
Mm-hmm.
or you did a daily practice to start your morning and to end your evening, right? Like connecting with how you want to show up for that day in your morning practice, and then connecting to how do you want to clear out the day and prepare the next day before you enter into sleep. And that's really going to set you up for success each and every day.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the analogy of using the breath to sweep out those those emotions and the tension and all that, and also not letting a trigger go to waste. I think that is
Yeah.
so profound because yeah, I mean triggers are it's a message. I mean, it's a mirror to us of what we're holding within us, right? With what our emotional programs are, our subconscious programs, and just our inner beliefs, I guess, right? Those triggers are very important signs that we should be keeping close attention to help us move through the blockages within us. Is that what do you agree?
I 100% agree. And, we say in somatic that every trigger is your body showing you where you're not free.
Yeah.
And so if we try not to be triggered, like, there's this false misconception, if you will, in the spiritual community at large that is this like, I need to be in a state of peace all the time. I need to be calm all the time. But that's not truly living.
Mm-hmm.
To
Right.
truly live is to feel the full spectrum of what it means to be alive, to feel fully into your joy, to feel fully into your anger, to feel fully into your grief, to feel fully into your elation. We're meant to feel it all. So if we're not allowing ourselves to feel the depths of our grief, we're also not allowing ourselves to feel the depth of our joy. And so when we're not allowing ourselves to get triggered, or every time we get triggered, we push that trigger away, or we flee from that experience, or we push that person out of our life, and I'm speaking from personal experience here, we're actually stopping the processes from coming completion. And that's all that a trigger is. It's just one of your many emotions or many versions of yourself that's saying, like, hey, you forgot me. And I just want to be seen and felt. There's a beautiful experience that we had in our recent in-person training in Austin a couple of weeks ago, where a woman said that on the last day of our 4-day in-person training, the students get to hold sessions for each other. And so they pair up together, and in the morning, one person leads a session. In the afternoon, they switch, and the other person leads a session. And the night before, the student shared that at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, she heard a knock on the door of her Airbnb. And her Airbnb is in the backyard of another house, so it's like there's no reason that there should be a person there or anything. And so it triggered her fear instinct.
Mm.
And so she called the police, she called the owner of the Airbnb, they all checked out the space, they checked the cameras, there was nobody there, they did see a raccoon, so they thought that that's probably all that it was. And she recognized that fear had come to visit her, and she allowed fear to take control.
Mm.
And so she was the first person to receive a session that morning from her partner, and again, fear came to visit her. But this time she decided to meet that fear, to see what it had to say. And all it had to say was, I just want to be seen and felt. And the moment that she greeted her fear with open arms, she didn't push it away, but she just allowed it space. She said it turned around, waved goodbye, and walked away and completely disappeared. And how beautiful would it be if we could actually do that with every single trigger that comes up for us?
Mm-hmm.
If we could look at that trigger as if it was a little child that just wanted attention, could we actually greet it with open arms and allow it to move through us, to recognize that if we actually allow it to move through us, that maybe the next time that that trigger gets flicked, because it's going to, we're never not going to get triggered as long as we are interacting with people in our lives. But maybe the next time it doesn't have as much of a charge because you've swept out a little of the energy behind it. And then the more you continue to do this work, the more you sweep out that energy. Maybe one day you get triggered and you realize it's actually no longer a trigger. And now you're actually able to just fully be present with what's there, recognizing that now that this thing is being triggered, that maybe it's something that's coming from another person, that it's actually saying more about that other person than it's saying about you now. And how can you hold space for that other person to witness what's coming up in them? One of my early teachers when I stepped onto this path is Ram Dass, and he always says, all we're doing is walking each other home. And that's really how I look at my job as a coach, as a practitioner, as an instructor, as a facilitator. I'm not trying to give people information. I'm not trying to give people answers. I'm just trying to walk them back to themselves. Because at the end of the day, I can't heal or help anyone else but myself. All I can do is create an energy and a capacity within myself that can offer a space for someone else to find that energy within themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. so many things that you just mentioned that brought up, just kind of aha moments for me. And it's funny, you know, and I could say the same thing. So I coach people into that are looking to get into a raw vegan or a vegan or a whole food plant-based lifestyle. And you mentioned with breath work, the best long-term strategy is, even if you have to do little, short sessions daily, it's going to be better than doing one, full journey and then, not doing it. So it's the
Yeah.
same with anybody trying to get into the plant-based lifestyle. um you don't want to, especially with raw, people want to be 100% raw. They do 100% raw for a month or so, and then they burn out with it, and then they fall off onto something completely different, and they just go up and down, and it's not a good way to go. And so yeah, just slowly, incrementally implementing daily practical tasks that you or practices that you can do consistently over time. That's going to give you the best results, right? So same with the breath work, with the vegan lifestyle, um, and it just reminds me that consistency, regardless of what we're trying to implement or accomplish, consistency is such an important aspect, with anything. So I appreciate, you know, you giving us that session that we just did, that 2 to 5 minute, breath work practice that we can each incorporate into our morning or, evening. Um, and I'm going to definitely be doing that every single day now, because it's interesting. As we were doing that, I was almost having to like hold back laughter. Like I just like I wanted to laugh, or like smile. So it's definitely, it shifts something within you. It really does something internally, and I think it's so powerful. And yeah, I agree. If you're gonna invest in one thing, now I'm getting into sound healing and things like this. So I've got some Tibetan bowls and some chimes and things like this, and that's actually helping me incorporate and focus more on breath work, because I like to incorporate the breath work with the meditation with the bowls. Um, so yeah, that's just another way that I'm trying to work in consistency with the breathwork practices. Um, yeah, so I was gonna go somewhere with that, and I just kind of got lost in what I was saying. But um, yeah, so thank you. I guess is I'll finish that thought with a thank you. But um, can we get back? I really want, when we were gonna start off, I wanted to have you share your story, because I think it's a powerful story. Um, it's really inspiring to see the journey you've been through, and I think a lot of people will also find it inspiring. So could you just share a little bit about how you got into breath work, what your story has looked like?
Yeah, yeah.
All right,
Before
thanks.
we get there, I just want to give you one invitation, because in breath work, it is all about expression. So that laughter that wanted to come out from your body,
Yeah.
next time you do the practice, don't hold it back.
Okay.
Let that out,
Yeah.
because that is what's going to help to reconnect the body back to the mind. It's
Sure.
reconnecting the sensations without definition,
Hmm.
and that it's okay for us to just express without there being anything behind it. Like, it doesn't have to have a reason for you to just laugh, or
Yeah.
for you to just cry, or for you to just shake or make noise. So for yourself as well as the listeners here, like, if there's an expression that's wanting to come out as you're moving through that practice, allow it to move through you.
Gotcha. Will do. Can I just say one thing?
Yeah,
You reminded me of what I was also wanting to say.
perfect.
It's funny. The I think part of what you said earlier is that a lot of maybe with my issue is ego, and I've realized, even if whether it's subconscious or it's ego, um, especially like on shows like this. So I'm not an expert in this field at all, and so I do notice I am much more. I feel like my ego is it feels more vulnerable in these interviews because I don't have much to add because I'm not that knowledgeable about it, and so I feel like and I think it takes me back to the self worth issue is that I always feel like I want to add something valuable, and I am just I'm more than happy to let you because you're very good at sharing this information and I can just tell like you like some people you can tell that are practitioners like they can talk the talk but maybe they don't walk the walk, but you I can tell, like I can just tell you're you're the real deal with this sort of stuff. So I appreciate the opportunity to have you on the show again. So, but yeah, it's just my ego. I feel like gets in my way with. I just feel so uncomfortable almost because I don't have any things to add. So I don't know. It just I don't even know why I shared that, but it just came out and it just came into my thoughts as I was doing the breathing exercise. So yeah.
Well,
Anyways.
this is honestly a really great point to bring up because, like, to remember back that the ego's job is to try and keep us safe and try and keep us alive, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's going to tell us when we're moving outside of the comfort zone, when we're moving into the danger zone, when we're getting ourselves into a position that might jeopardize our continued existence. The problem is it takes all the information of what we've experienced up until this point and applies it to the present moment. But every present moment has context, and the ego ignores the context of what's happening right now.
Mhm.
It instead looks at, oh, well, this situation that's happening right now is similar to what happened back then, and this is how we reacted and survived, so enact.
Mhm.
And it just plays the program. And if you don't have enough capacity within yourself to be able to choose how you're going to respond in that moment, then the ego and autonomic nervous system are just going to react based upon the previous programming. The one thing that I want everyone to recognize is that all of this programming was created from the intelligence of your body to keep you safe at one point in time. We have to recognize the intelligence of these responses first and foremost. But just because something was helpful at one point in time doesn't mean it's going to be helpful in the long run.
Mhm.
So, as an example, a certain diet may work for you for a certain period of time, but as your body adapts and changes, that diet also needs to adapt and change to continue the evolution of the vessel.
Mm.
If you keep treating it the same way, but things start changing, but you keep doing the same thing, and then you wonder why all of a sudden the inflammation's coming back, why the digestive issues are coming back. Well, if you're not changing anything, then things are going to start presenting you with issues. So the ego inherently isn't the bad guy. And this is what modern day spirituality teaches us, that we need to kill the ego, we need to eradicate the ego, we need to transcend the ego. I'm sorry, but it is an impossibility because the ego is part of you.
Mm.
It will always be, it has always been, and we are not going to be able to change that. What we can change is our relationship to the ego. When we can befriend our ego, when we can have the conversation with the ego that it has done a fantastic job keeping us safe up until this point, but it has now lost its privileges to drive the car, it needs to take a back seat, and now it's our turn to drive the car. This is, in my opinion, what self-discovery work and self-mastery is all about. It's about regaining control over your body because you are not your body. Who you inherently are, the energy that you bring to every conversation and every situation is not of your body. It is beyond your body. It is the part of you that will depending upon your beliefs, will continue to exist when this body no longer exists. The ego is also something that ceases to exist when this body ceases to exist because the ego is attached to this body. So this brings us to the power of breath work because breath work has the ability to allow us to transcend the body. And this is something that the ego is incredibly terrified because when we transcend the body, we transcend the ego for a moment and we connect with that version of ourselves that's beyond the ego. And when we connect to that version of ourselves, the ego starts to lose control. And that's why it starts to enact the fear, the anxiety, the worry, the what ifs around starting these practices, because it knows in its infinite intelligence where these practices are going to lead you to. It's going to lead you to putting the ego in the back seat, no longer the driver's seat.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Well, do you want to share how this has transpired in your life and just
I
what
will.
that looked like?
Yeah, I will. And maybe we can even kind of tie into the like I like everyone still have an ego and still have a working relationship with it, but my
Sure.
relationship is definitely better with it than it has been in the past. And so just for the sake of time, I'll try to condense the story down as much as I can. I'm gonna have to leave out many parts of it, but I'll at least give the most important parts that led me to where I'm at today.
Okay.
And so I grew up in a town called Snohomish, Washington, kind of out in the country. So I'm very much more of a country boy than a city boy. Grew up on 2 acres, playing in the woods. Was born in the 80s, so grew up in the 80s and 90s before the internet. So I spent a lot of time outside as a kid. Spent a lot of time riding my bike, spent a lot of time just trying to be as much of a kid as I possibly could be in the environment that I was in that didn't really allow me to be a kid.
Mhm.
I grew up with a dad who struggled with his own issues, struggled with alcoholism a lot in the earlier portions of my childhood and into my teens. That really was kind of the stem of a lot of my own childhood issues and a lot of my own insecurities and things that I started to lead into life. But it was living in this environment where I constantly had to be hyper vigilant. I constantly had to be aware of where my dad's emotional state was and to shape shift my own emotions and myself to make sure that I wasn't creating any conflict or I wasn't triggering him in any way, because when my dad got triggered, it got very volatile. And so it was always my mother, my sisters, and I is trying to do whatever we could to not piss dad off, because we never wanted to see that side of him. And now doing the work that I do, I can recognize that how he showed up was just his way of trying to deal with everything that he was carrying because he didn't have the knowledge and tools to deal with the childhood that he had.
Mhm.
This led me to when I was 12, I was diagnosed as ADHD and bipolar. I 100% own ADHD. I do not associate with bipolar anymore because now I recognize that that was just my highly sensitive nervous system doing what it needed to do to mimic where my dad was.
Mhm.
I was co-regulating with my dad's emotions all the time. And as his emotions swung, because he definitely was bipolar, my emotions would swing. And back in the 90s, they didn't have the knowledge around this. Dr. Elaine Aron was just beginning to do her research into highly sensitive people and what that meant. And if any of you are interested around highly sensitive people, I highly recommend looking into Dr. Elaine Aron's work. It's really fascinating work. But I then spent 8 years being medicated by modern day medicine for ADHD, for bipolar, for anxiety, for depression, and was on and off many, many different medications throughout those 8 years. That then led me to take on the story that in order to be normal, I needed to be medicated.
Mm.
And that started my journey with substance abuse issues. I got off the medications because I didn't want to keep paying how much it was costing to do those medications. I also didn't like how they made me feel. There was a lot of side effects that I was starting to notice. So I went to alcohol and cannabis. And that led to really starting on the tread of a very, very dark place in my life. And in 2009, I went through a really, really bad breakup. I got into a really bad car accident. Shortly before that car accident, I got demoted from my manager position and my pay got substantially decreased. With the housing market the way that it was after the crash in 2008, I ended up losing my house. And so it was like my life just felt like it was crumbling around me. And that was when I finally I reached out to a friend and I was like, I don't know what to do right now. I'm really on the verge of just not wanting to be here anymore.
Mm.
And that was when I kind of like hit rock bottom, if you will. And so he gave me the name and number to the therapist that he was seeing at the time. And I did one session with this therapist. And at the end of the session, he brought out his prescription portfolio and gave me a prescription for more medication.
Mm.
I walked out of that, threw the prescription in the trash because I knew where that was going to lead. And I started looking elsewhere. I started looking for like, what are some other options? And that's when I discovered a yoga studio that was close to the place that I was working out at the time. And they introduced me to pranayama, which is the yogic version of breathwork. And they never used the term breathwork. I just realized that there was something really powerful of this. And so after several yoga sessions and breathing practices, I started feeling better. And then, as we typically do when we start feeling better, it's like, okay, I'm going to stop doing that practice because I feel good now.
Yeah.
And like, it then led on to these cycles of where I would feel good for a while and then I would start to not feel good. And then I would get back into practices and then I would feel good for a while and then I would let go of them. And there was never really this like consistency, but life kind of started finding its way back and things kind of started getting better. And then in 2012, I ended up having a split with a business partner that I started my first company with. And this led into a long legal battle. And again, cycles are starting to repeat.
Mm.
This then led me onto the path of wanting to find out, why are these cycles continuing to repeat in my life? And that led me to seeking meditation and spirituality. This is when I discovered Alan Watts and Ram Dass and Eastern mysticism and philosophies and Zen Buddhism and Stoicism. And I just dove into all of this. That then led me in 2015 discovering energy work. And I'd always kind of leaned more into a spiritual standpoint rather than religion. And I got certified in Reiki, really connected with this energy that is of our body, this energy that permeates all thing. And for those that aren't familiar with Reiki, it's just another word for prana, life force, on, you know, whatever name you want to call it. It's just the energy that animates all things.
Mm-hmm.
And in learning to work with that, I started to recognize the energies of the subtle body, that we aren't just the physical body, we have an energy body too. And when we don't put attention to that body as well, the physical body can never run at its optimum. And so I traveled to Glastonbury, England in 2016. I studied with William Rand of the International Center of Reiki Training and got my master's training with that because I had every intention of like wanting to teach it. And then the imposter syndrome set in. And then it was like, okay, I have all these tools now. I have all this knowledge. But the fear of actually putting myself out there, the fear of actually teaching, the fear of giving other people these tools, the fear of what are my, you know, peers going to think about me, of stepping into this very feminine realm of things. And it's so different than anything else that I've ever done. All of my stuff started coming up. All of my worthiness stuff started coming up. And so 2 years of dealing with this internal battle of wanting to bring the work out there, wanting to help other people with how it's helped me, but being too fearful to actually do it, led my wife and I to making a drastic decision to buy a 40-foot school bus and sell our home, sell all of our cars, sell everything that wouldn't fit in that 40-foot school bus. And we hit the road. I put my business on hold, and it was just a time period of really trying to discover, what do I want to do with my life? Who do I actually want to be? Do I want to move into more of the wellness realm of things, or do I want to keep doing what I've always done? And, I in 2010, I started a home theater installation business that was really focused around high-end home theater.
Mm.
And so very much around feeding materialism and giving people what they thought they needed to feel good about themselves and feel happy. And the longer I did that, the more I felt like I wasn't actually helping people like I thought I wanted to. And so in 2018, I made the decision to travel down to Peru, and I did a 10-day plant medicine retreat where I first encountered breath work as I know breath work now.
Mm.
And the two breathwork sessions that I did were actually more powerful than all of the plant medicine ceremonies that I did in those 10 days.
Really?
I relived memories from 2, 3, and 4 years old that when I say relived them, it was like I was me now in that room watching the interaction between my younger self and my dad.
Mm.
Being able to feel everything that my younger self felt in that moment, and being able to tie those feelings to all of the imposter syndrome and worthiness issues and everything that was coming up now, to recognize that what happened in my childhood was actually manipulating and dictating how my life was showing up now. And when I was able to allow that inner child to cry, to collapse, to go into the fetal position, to just shake and let it all come out of my body, I all of a sudden felt lighter. I felt more clear. I felt more connected with who I actually was beneath all of this stuff, who I was when I was first born before the world told me who I should be. And so I left that retreat, I came back home, and I had every intention of training in primordial breathwork, the type of breathwork that I did in Peru. But it came with a lot of prerequisites, and all of those prerequisites required me to go to Peru and train with that shaman. Not feasible for my life at that point in time, both from a locational standpoint and a financial standpoint. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put a pin in this. I'm going to keep doing the practices that he gave me that are kind of more of the daily practices. And I got in touch with a lot of other breathwork teachers and did probably close to, I would say, about 100 or so sessions, just myself on my own journey before, at the end of 2021, I discovered Stephen Jaggers and Somatic Breathwork.
Mm.
And he offered a free session to Victor Oto's Full-Time Purpose community that was a coaching program that I was a part of.
Mm.
And after that session, I immediately signed up for the very first online certification training that he taught. That was a 3-month program. From that one decision, it completely changed the trajectory of my life. At that time, I was a part-time CrossFit coach while also doing my home theater work, because I was still wanting to lean into coaching and wellness and still wanting to get into that path, but I was still trying to find the right avenue that was really going to help me to step into that role. And once I completed the certification training, I ran with it. I got my certification done well before the time period that they gave us. I got my full tuition paid back within 90 days because I was just doing as many sessions as I possibly could. And after one session, I had just this intuitive sense to email Stephen and say, if there's anything that I can ever do to help you guys, to be more a part of what you're doing, I would love to.
Mm.
that then led to me coming on to just for the next training share my experience and share how things have been going for me, because I had started, creating a lot of momentum within my breathwork practice. And that then led to becoming a mentor, that then led to becoming one of the instructors. And now here I am helping to run the summits and teach both the in-person online trainings and just be more a part of the movement. And we've got a lot of really exciting things that we're going to be bringing out in 2026. And to witness who I am today, and even if I rewind back 5 years and was able to see who I am today versus where I was then, I would not have believed it was possible, because who I am today is so radically different than who I was in the past. I dealt with a lot of anger issues in the past, and I shared that with a student recently, and she was just like, I can't see that. Like, nothing you can say is ever going to let me picture you being an angry person. And I wasn't that I was an angry person. I was just carrying a lot of anger. And I truly believe that there are no angry people. There are just people carrying a lot of anger. There aren't depressed people. They're just people who need deep rest because they've been pushing themselves way too far, way too fast for way too long. There aren't anxious people. There's just people who are carrying anxiousness within themselves. It's when we can actually move these things through our body, when we can create space, when we can clear out that memory card, it actually allows us to be the person that we've always been. And that's what I truly believe about this work. Like, self-development work isn't about becoming someone different.
Mm-hmm.
It's about remembering who you've always been. It's about letting go of all the masks that you've put on to say, I'm this person, or I'm this person, or I'm this person. So like, if you're listening to this and you've really resonated with this, like, where in your life are you wearing masks? Like, who are the people that you're hanging out with that you have to manipulate and change who you are to make them comfortable? And start to question those relationships, start to question those dynamics, because if you're spending time with people that aren't helping to lift you up, that aren't allowing you the space to be who you naturally are, then those really aren't the people that you need in your life. And like, I really, I love your messaging around connecting people with more of a plant-based diet, because in that full journey, I converted to being vegan. I was born lactose intolerant, so like not having dairy wasn't a big thing for me, but I grew up in an American household where we ate animals.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, I never put two and two together that like actually compassion starts on your plate. Like, if I want to be a more compassionate person, I can't be ingesting products that are carrying stress, that are carrying cortisol, that are carrying, I don't want to die, because the body keeps the score. And not just the human body, but the animal body too. And so in 2012, my wife and I converted to vegetarian. Then in 2013, we went full on vegan, and we've been vegan ever since. And I will actually say that that was probably one of the biggest catalysts on my spiritual journey that opened up so many things. It opened up my subtle energy body. It opened me up to the sense that actually there is way more aliveness available to us when we stop eating things that are dead. But instead, when we only consume things that have life in them, that have light in them, then we too will have life and light in us. And so it wasn't one singular thing. Like, I'd love to say the breathwork was the thing that did it all, but it was
Mm-hmm.
a lot of small changes over a very long period of time that led me to where I'm at today. So, like, if I could leave people with one big message from sharing my story, it's about take the small steps. Make the small changes, because it's not the big drastic changes that are going to lead your life to where you want it to go. It's the small changes that you do every single day that are actually going to lead to where you want to go. Because It's all the small little things that happen to us throughout our life that led us to where we're at right now. So how can we expect one big thing to make a change over what's happened over a long period of time? So we have to make sure that we give ourselves grace as we're moving through this process, that we're going to have good days and we're going to have bad days. And that's okay. It's okay to feel good one day. It's okay to not feel good. And it's also okay to not feel good and feel good at the exact same time, because we actually have the capacity to carry that too.
Yeah, wow, man. I mean, I feel like I'm listening to a version of myself that, it's like we're on two parallel realms, and it's like so I'm very inspired by you, and just like the steps you've taken, the risks you've taken to follow your intuition to what you've been led to. Um, you know, the plant-based journey, the vegan journey that you've been on, I could say the exact same thing. That was like the catalyst to my spiritual awakening, and just becoming more aware and conscious of the subtle energies within me and my internal thought processes, and just a lot of the subconscious programming that I had accumulated over my lifetime, and also even going back to our childhoods. I grew up in the '80s as well, and a lot of similarities in our early years. So yeah, it's just like I really just I'm very just inspired by by hearing your story, and I'm definitely gonna look into joining. Like I said when we started, I found out about you through Soma IQ and the workshop you guys put on, and we talked about this before we went live. So you have another Soma IQ workshop starting this coming week, correct?
Yeah, it'll be the 9th through the 11th.
Okay.
And so it is going to be the first day. We're going to kind of be breaking down a little bit of what I talked about today, of how the body keeps the score. And I take people through the body mapping exercise, which is that's connecting to your physical sensations, connecting to your emotions, and then connecting to the stories. And then there's one more step behind that I'll share in that summit, that kind of then takes us into day 2, where we guide everybody through a full journey session.
Mm.
So you can actually experience what it's like to really be with yourself and your breath for an hour and see what wants to come through from that. And then the last day, Stephen Jaggers, our founder, is going to jump on, and he's going to share about the practitioner meta skills. We have 4 meta skills that we believe, in order to truly be a practitioner, these are the things that you have to embody. And they're alignment, attunement, holding space, and range.
Mm.
And you actually spoke to alignment already within this podcast. Of alignment means that what you are thinking, what you are saying, and what you are doing are all saying the same thing. And so I'm sure all of us on this conversation have had an experience where we want to work with somebody, and the words that they're saying we really resonate with. We love what they're saying. But there's this sense, this just innate knowing that they're not actually telling us the full story,
Mm-hmm.
because either their body language is portraying what they're saying, or what they're actually thinking isn't in alignment with what they're saying. Maybe you can think about somebody within your life that, is holding this role where their thoughts, words, and actions aren't all congruent with one another.
Mm-hmm.
This is being out of alignment. This also then leads, when someone's out of alignment, there's an inherent level of safety that cannot be met within a session. And for me, safety is the number one modality within everything that I work with.
Mm.
If somebody doesn't feel safe with me, they're not going to feel safe to go into their experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't feel safe to go into their experience, then why are we even spending time together? Right? Like, I don't want to waste anybody's time. So like, I know I'm not everyone's medicine, but I am the right medicine for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the people that I want to work with. So it's being able to find this internal alignment of when I first started my breathwork practice, I wanted to work with everybody. I just wanted to share breathwork with the world because I was so inspired. But inherently, in wanting to work with everybody, I was finding more challenge, and apologies for my cat that's making a bunch of noise in the background. Um, I started encountering some people that I just didn't really align with.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't inherently want to work with. So this then begged me to start looking within myself of like, okay, where is my misalignment drawing in the people that aren't truly in alignment with this work? And that's where my work as a practitioner and a facilitator is constantly working around is the more I can bring myself into alignment and attunement with who I am and how I want to show up, then that energy is what's going to give other people the opportunity to find that within themselves. Because again, at the end of the day, I'm not out to fix anybody because nobody's broken. That is a message that I think everybody needs to hear, that you are not broken. You might feel that way, and maybe you've had people tell you that, but none of us are broken. We're all just carrying stuff that's telling us who we're supposed to be instead of accepting who we actually are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what all of this work is truly about. It's just about letting go of all of the ways in which we tell ourselves who we should be or how we should be, or maybe it's your dad or your mom's voice of constantly ridiculing you and criticizing you. But like, where can you celebrate all of the things that you do right? Where can you celebrate all of the areas in which you are making improvements? And the more you can celebrate those little things, the easier it's going to be to keep moving in that direction. More pressure on ourselves is never going to lead to making the differences that we actually want to make in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that resonates completely. So yeah, I hope, and I'll put the link to. Is there a link for people to sign up?
There is, yeah. If you actually just go to somaticbreathwork.com,
Okay.
there'll be a little pop-up where you'll be able to register for the 3-day summit. It is 100% free. We do also offer replays. So if you really resonated with the teachings and you want to be able to watch it again and again, there's an option to be able to purchase into those replays for lifetime access. So you can come back to them whenever you want.
Okay, great. I will definitely put that in the description box down below. I like I said, I went to one of them, and actually I was trying to listen to it while I was, because I still have a day job, and so I was working and listening, and so I didn't get the full. I got the first day, and then like little bits and pieces of the next. So I'm definitely gonna sign up again, because yeah, like I said, I really connected with how you were communicating the information, how you went about the session. So yeah, I'm gonna sign up. So I hope other people will as well. Do you have time for a few questions from the audience?
Of course,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, great. So let's hop over into the Q&A room. Before we do, besides your Instagram, is there any other places that you would prefer people find you?
Yeah, so if you actually head to my website, which is embraceandexpand.com, as soon as you get on the website, there will be a pop-up window that pops up. If you enter in your email address, it'll give you a link to be able to download a pre-recorded daily practice that I created. It's my free gift to you. It's about an 18-minute long recording because I take some time to explain the practice and everything, but roughly it's about a 10-minute practice, the same practice that we went through, but it's guided, it's got music behind it, so it's a little bit more of an experience. So if you'd really like to start having this be a daily practice for you, then I highly recommend starting with that recording so you can start to kind of get your own sense. And then once you really develop kind of the sense of like how the practice is meant to go, then you can kind of just do it on your own whenever you need to.
Okay, awesome. I didn't realize you had a website, so I'm gonna check that out. Definitely utilize that breathwork session. Okay, let's head over to the Q&A room here, and we will answer some questions. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. Rocky, good to see you. Carl, Mallory, what's up? All right, let's see here. I know there's a couple questions that came in earlier. Carl loved the breathwork. practice that you gave us. So thank you for that. Um, Rocky says, I'm wondering how you get your body to breathe correctly naturally without forced breathing practices. Like Wim Hof does not feel good for Rocky. Like,
Mm.
how do you do that?
Yeah, so the first and foremost is, and I'm glad that she touched on like Wim Hof isn't working for her,
Mm-hmm.
because this is the thing of like finding the breathwork practice that works for you. But the way that you are going to retrain your body to naturally breathe in a certain way is by consciously breathing. So the more you do these conscious breathing techniques, whether it's the somatic daily practice that I taught you today, whether it's simple box breathing where you're breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, breathing out for 4 seconds, and holding for 4 seconds. There's all kinds of different types of those style of breathing patterns, but it's about consciously breathing. The more you consciously breathe, the more that your nervous system is start to find that regulation. And it's in finding natural regulation that that's where your body is going to start breathing in a certain way. So we have to first take the body out of being in chronic stress all the time. If your body is stuck in fight or flight, it's naturally going to want to mouth breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Think about like if you were getting chased by a dog, what are you going to do? You're going to run as fast as you can. And how are you going to be breathing? Right? Because that's what's triggering your body to push all of the blood out to the muscles, to make everything work as fast as it can, to turn off the digestive system. It's enacting the sympathetic side of the nervous system. If we want to be in regulation, we need to trigger the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. And so we can also break this down in a more even simple way. Instead of thinking about certain practices, or instead of thinking about breathing in certain patterns, if you are increasing the length of your inhale, you are going to keep yourself in fight or flight. If you are increasing the length of your exhale, you are going to keep yourself in rest and digest. So that's the simplest thing that you can start to do, is simply slowing down your breath. Try to breathe through your nose as much as you possibly can. So throughout the day, if you start recognizing that you're this is why mouth taping while sleeping is also a really important thing. When you're sleeping, it's your subconscious mind that's constantly at play. And your subconscious mind is operating 95% of what's happening. So if you're programming yourself in that subconscious mode by taping your mouth while you're sleeping, thus forcing yourself to breathe through your nose, that's another way that you can start to reprogram your breathing habits without actually having to be conscious and aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different things that you can do to start getting the body to breathe in a proper way. But like the easiest things is just really noticing how you're breathing. And when you notice you're breathing through your mouth, switch to breathing through the nose and really try to elongate the exhale as much as you can.
Thank you. Can I just add a couple things?
Yeah.
So what I have kind of been trying to do in my personal life ever since I started getting into the sound healing, is and working on nervous system regulation, is creating an environment in your home that is calming and makes you feel safe. Because as Adam said earlier, it's really, it all comes down to safety and how you feel, if you feel safe in your body. So putting up, whatever it is, pictures or sayings or quotes or anything, um, vibrant, you know, um, like blankets or something on your wall to make you feel like you're in a very calm and like safe environment. I think that's helpful. It has been for me, anyways. And then, as Adam was saying earlier, also is building consistency is what's going to help your nervous system. As they say, neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you do it, the easier it's going to be. And I as I've been kind of studying this, the example of like an abused dog came to my mind. Like if you take in an abused dog, which we've taken in, my family has, and even though the dog has a safe environment now, like in this moment, you bring in the dog to your home, it's got a safe environment. It should feel safe around you, but it doesn't because it's still holding on to those memories in its body of the trauma that it experienced earlier. And so it can take, even though like you start working with the dog and you start to see progress, there's still times where it's going to revert back to that fear response. And it could take 6 months, it could take 12 months for that dog to finally feel free and safe to be itself. And, it takes a long time. So it takes consistency of providing that safety for your nervous system to finally get to the space where you no longer have, or at least it's very rare that you would have those, those flare ups or whatever, where you're feeling that anxiety or whatever, or that irregulated breathing. So that's just kind of the analogy that I thought of in my mind is like working with an abused dog. It takes a long time, even though it's now in a safe environment to feel truly safe.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the dog, and that's actually one that I use a lot of times to talk about the natural way of discharging energy.
Mm,
Like animals know how to do this really well, and dogs are a perfect example of this.
yeah.
I we rescue all of our animals, and so they all come with their own stuff. Our current dog, he was as a puppy, he was abandoned in a field in Alabama, so
Mm.
we call him an Alabama mud puppy because we don't really know exactly what he is. Um, but he has kind of this like, as he's gotten older, he's 3 now, he's developed this like little bit of stranger danger
Mm-hmm.
kind of sensation, and we've been working with him, so we have this process that when he meets somebody new we kind of go through, and every single time he meets somebody new you can see he kind of stiffens up a little bit. Sometimes his tail gets tucked, sometimes he's a little barky, and then once he realizes that that person's okay, you see him kind of like soften a little bit, and then he shakes from head to tail.
Yeah.
And then as soon as he shakes, he's back to his normal self again. It's in that shaking where he's like, okay, I actually finally feel safe. I can let it all go. We forget that we are also animals and that we can do that too. Sound and movement are the two things that help to shift energy more than anything. And so that's why breathwork works so well, because when we're breathing actively, we're making sound. Sometimes we make more sound if we attach to an emotion. Sometimes we're moving the body. Sometimes we're just moving the diaphragm. So it is that sound and movement that really helps the body to discharge anything that it's carrying.
Yeah. Love that. All right. Let's see. Rocky also says, Rocky's got a lot to say here. So thank you, Rocky, for the comments. Um, Rocky says, many people with nervous system dysregulation avoid because it doesn't feel good, makes life feel worse in the long run. They also grew up in the 80s and 90s. And they said that your story sounds very similar to many. Unfortunately, many don't find nervous system regulation. Yeah, it's really about finding the tools, and I do think that if we're open to the tools, if we're open to the messaging, it's likely available to everybody. Like I think everybody has the opportunity to find these things, but a lot of people, their ego or whatever it is, blocks them from accepting the invitation to explore those things. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but I'll kind of keep it concise. And messaging really is everything. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people get gravitated to the Soma IQ way, which Soma IQ just stands for body intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
in that we inherently don't make it super scientific and we don't make it super woo woo. we try to find ourselves partway in between, because inherently there are things that happen in a breathwork session that aren't really fully explainable.
Mm.
One of my favorite words is ineffable, which means no words. And really, I've had so many breathwork sessions where at the end of it, I am at a loss for words for what just happened, because so much can happen in such a short period of time that it's challenging to put it all into words, to make it all make sense. And so sometimes we need to give ourselves time after a session for the session to actually like integrate, for it to make sense.
Mm.
But if we try to make it too complex, well, then it's going to be too complex. So that's why we take this really simple approach of like, the breathing patterns aren't really complex. It's not 2 or 3 part breathing patterns. We're not going to breathe one way and then breathe a different way and then breathe a different way and then breathe a different way. And there's a lot of breath works out there where it's almost like they're throwing the whole kitchen sink at you, right? Like
Yeah.
there's music going, there's rattles, there's drums, there's incense. It's like too much, guys. Like we don't need it all. We just need to meet ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be as simple as that. But many times when people are hurting, the idea of having to meet something that potentially caused that hurt that we're carrying stops us from actually doing the work. My experience and the experience of the majority of my clients is that we're not reliving those experiences. We're not inherently having to even revisit them or rewatch them or reanalyze them. All we need to know is that what I went through back then trapped something within my body
Mm-hmm.
that's just energy. And again, everything is energy, according to quantum physics. And if energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can only be transferred, then why don't we just send it back to whoever transferred it to us in the first place? I lost my dad this last year to cancer, and through that whole process, so many things came up for me, so many things that I had thought I'd worked through.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the beautiful experience of being with him on the day that he passed and actually helping him to pass, utilizing a lot of the tools that I use in my coaching. And that experience was not only one of the most difficult, but also one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever had in my life. But because there were so many things that were never able to be spoken about, there were so many things that I wasn't able to hash out with my dad, I was left holding a lot of these things. And so over this last year, I've been doing my own work again of where can I let go of some of the things that I took on from him, of some of the things that I learned of how, if somebody does this, then this is how you're supposed to react. Or if this happens, then this is how you're supposed to react. So I think we always have this beautiful opportunity to ask ourselves the question, is this how I actually want to show up? And if the answer is no, then that's beautiful because you get the choice to choose a different way. It doesn't mean it's not going to take work. It, of course, is going to, because behaviors don't just change overnight. But that little work, that little bit every single day is going to make a difference in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry to hear about your dad.
Thank you.
Rocky also says talk therapy has never worked for me. That's what led me to somatic experiencing. And I've seen that a lot in the different threads and posts I've come across. Is that yeah, and I haven't done talk therapy myself, but it seems like a lot of people find that it, and that's what led them here, is that talk therapy just didn't work. Do you have any experience with that?
Well, starting at 12, I was sitting in front of a
Right.
therapist until I was 20 of, constantly talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about it only does so much because talking about it doesn't change the fact that your body is still holding on to things.
Sure.
And I do believe that talk therapy is an absolutely valuable tool. I do believe that we do need to have some sort of a conscious understanding around our patterns, around the internal family systems, around all of the different ways in which our psyche works with our body. It's
Mm-hmm.
important for us to have that knowledge. But knowledge is only knowledge if it's never truly applied. And that's where somatics turns that knowledge into wisdom because you're actually living it, you're actually using it, you're actually feeling what it's like to move those things through your system. Almost every single person that I work with in a one-on-one coaching fashion has been through or is currently going through therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually really love working with people who are in therapy because they get to go through the somatic work with me and then go to their therapist and integrate that work through the talk therapy. I personally think that that's how it should work.
Mm.
It's not just one or the other, it's both. Because we aren't just one or the other, we're both.
Right.
So, yes, we need the top down approach, but we also need the bottom up approach. And when we can take both of those things together, that's actually what's going to lead to the true transformations that people are looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Rocky also asked if there's any books that you can recommend on somatics.
So, Body Keeps the Score is a fantastic one. Let me look over at my shelf here.
While
The Myth
you
of Normal.
while you answer, I'm just gonna quick
Yeah,
run and let my cat out of the door. So I'll be right back.
absolutely. So The Myth of Normal by Gabor Mate, that's a really fantastic book to just learn more around trauma and, how our childhood manipulates and changes things. There is another book called Breath. That's a
Hmm.
really good one. Let's see here. I mean, there's so many good books on this information. Um, One other really fascinating book, I'm not seeing it on the shelf because I think I actually loaned it to a client. I'll tell you what, I'll send you a list of books that you can put down in the description below,
Awesome.
and that might be a little bit more helpful.
Sure. Okay. Great. All right. Yeah. When I came back, I heard you say breath. Did you say oxygen advantage? Have you read that one?
That's another really good one. I haven't read that one, but
Okay.
that's another really good book that's on our recommended reading list for
Okay.
somatic.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of how I got into breath work 5 years ago after my fast. That's where I first started. So yeah.
Walking the Tiger by Peter Levine. That was the one that I was thinking
Ah.
about.
Okay. Awesome. All
Or sorry,
right.
I think Waking the Tiger, not Walking the Tiger.
Waking the Tiger. Peter Levine. Oh yeah, that she actually said Peter Levine is who Rocky has been looking into.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's see here. Rocky also feels imposter syndrome for so many parts of her life. Rocky, I'm sorry. I know you told me this in a previous show. I can't remember if you're male or female, so I'm just gonna say her because I don't recall. But putting herself out there and feeling like they're good enough. So that's been their issue with imposter syndrome, which yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure.
Yeah. And imposter syndrome is one of those like we also refer to it as the inner critic. It's this voice that we've developed throughout our life as a safety mechanism because inherently to put yourself out there is dangerous, or at least that's what our ego tells us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That if we put ourselves out there, what if this happens? What if they say this? What if the judgment? What if? But what if you put yourself out there and your story drastically changes someone's life?
Right.
What if you put yourself out there and your story stops someone from taking their life? What if you put yourself out there and it creates an opportunity that gives you more wealth than you ever could have possibly imagined?
Mm.
What if you put yourself out there and it continues to show you more and more of yourself that gives you permission to put more and more of yourself out there? The imposter syndrome is so effective because our mind has been trained to look for the negative, to look for the ways that things can go wrong. So, the fastest way that we can start to shut up the imposter syndrome is by starting to look for all of the ways that it could go right. All of the ways in which that it could go so much better than we could possibly imagine. Because if you think it can be hard, you can also think it can be easy.
Yeah. It's all about perspective, right? I
Yeah.
mean, perspective is key. I've definitely learned that over my life. Is that you can take that's why two people can have the same, be in the same experience and have totally different views on what happened. Right? It's the experience, or it's the perspective.
Gabor explains that in real in depth in The Myth of Normal, that what's inherently traumatic for one person isn't necessarily traumatic for another person
Mm-hmm.
because we all have different capacity to handle certain things. Where I might be really stressed out by having too many things on my plate in one singular day, where someone else is going to thrive in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where comparison is the thief of joy. We can't compare ourselves to anybody else. So again, what works for one person may not work for another person. Rocky, you might try somatic breath work and maybe you decide it's too intense for you. So maybe you look into a different type of breathing practice like pranayama, where it's focused more on calm, soothing breathing, slower pacing. Maybe you find out it really works for you. So like that's the thing, is like trial and error is the biggest thing. Like those of us that grew up in any type of schooling system, especially the public schooling system, we were trained that to make a mistake meant that you were wrong. To make a mistake meant that you weren't going to get a good grade. To make a mistake meant that you were going to get punished. I've learned so much more from my mistakes in my life than I ever have from my successes.
Yeah.
So, not being afraid to make mistakes is actually one of the things that gives you so much more freedom, because it's like, okay, who cares if I make a mistake? I'll learn from it. I won't make it again. And if I do make it again, well, then I didn't learn the first time. So I needed to do it again so that I could learn this time.
Yeah.
I went through this recently with a coaching client and I had a reminder. I was like, Thomas Edison had to create over 1,000 light bulbs before he finally made one that worked.
Right.
Where would we be if at the third failure he was like, I guess it's not possible. Let's go back to just using candles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Great point. That's also why it's so important to get out of our comfort zone, where we're more likely to fail. And then we're going to learn about ourselves and how to better live our lives, I would say.
Yeah, magic happens outside the comfort zone.
Yes, exactly. All right, last question. I just looked at the time. It's already a quarter to 12 here in Minnesota. So I didn't realize we had gone that long. I appreciate you giving us all your time here,
Of
because
course.
it's really been valuable and very educational. So thank you. Last question from Rocky is: do you use any? Let's see, where'd it go? There was she was asking, and she said she is a lady. Rocky is her dog. I remember her saying that now. So yeah, she asked if you use any herbal supplements, and then also what are your thoughts on nervous system regulation hacks. She said she feels like quick fixes aren't it, but they're heavily promoted.
I would 100% agree with that notion. I don't like using the word nervous system hacks. What we really need to learn is nervous system education.
Mm.
We need to learn how our nervous system works. And you learn how your nervous system works by reconnecting to your body, by connecting to the physical sensations. And what are those physical sensations trying to communicate? Learning that, like if you can learn how your own body works and how your own body communicates to you, that's going to make so much more impact than any hacks or any changes that you make in that way. Because I agree, anything that happens fast doesn't lead to lasting change. Lasting change only happens by things that happen slowly. Look at nature in this way. Nature doesn't go from summer to winter. There's a transitionatory period that's called fall, and that happens very progressively and slowly. A tree doesn't lose all of its leaves in one fell swoop. This kind of off the subject, but it's relevant. My wife and I, we always do a Harry Potter marathon every holiday season. That's just kind of part of our holiday thing. And we watched the third movie last night, and in that movie, it shows the Whomping Willow shedding its leaves like that. Works in a movie, but it doesn't actually happen in nature. Trees drop their leaves over a slow period of time. They grow them back over a slow period of time. Bamboo is a perfect example of this. It spends 5 years creating its root zone before a single shoot pops out of the soil.
Mm.
Lasting change happens slowly. So anything that we want to make and have last, we need to take it step by step, not making drastic changes overnight, just like what you spoke about, switching to a raw plant-based diet, right? Like we can't go from eating one way on a Monday to eating completely different on a Tuesday and expect for us to continue to feel good. Like it's too much of a shock to our system. So we need to slowly remove things and slowly add things as we progress through. Same thing's going to happen in breath work. Same thing's going to happen in nervous system regulation. You know, I would say I've been working on my nervous system consciously for about 7 years now.
Mm.
And it hasn't been for the last probably 2 years that I've really, really noticed the changes starting to take place. And I'm not consciously making the changes.
Mm-hmm.
They're natural byproducts of doing the work. And to me, that is what is so impactful about this work, that when you let go of the pressure of needing to fix yourself, when you let go of the pressure of needing to be different, but instead adopt this self-discovery mentality of, I just want to know more about myself. I actually want to know who I truly am beyond the patterns, beyond the limiting beliefs. And when I can connect to that person, then that's when I'm going to be able to live life fully in alignment. That's really what the work is all about, because then everything else that's there is a byproduct. When you're living in alignment, your boundaries naturally present themselves. You don't have to set them. You naturally are going to recognize when somebody's pushing that boundary or stepping over it. You're then going to be able to easily recognize when you need to enact that boundary or communicate with that other individual when it's been crossed. It's not that we need to create all of these things. They're going to be a natural byproduct of you actually authentically owning who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, that speaks to me very deeply. I definitely resonate with that. So thank you.
But to answer her question on the supplements, so I do take supplements. I actually I haven't drank coffee in over a decade, and so I make like kind of like mud water, but it's my own mixture. And so there's 10 different medicinal mushrooms that are in there. There is a like it's kind of got a chai mix in it to just give it a little bit of spiciness, but I add turmeric, and certain parts of the year I'll add ashwagandha and astragalus and a little bit of creatine and a little bit of protein mixture that's in that. And then I also mix it in with like a little bit of chocolate caramel element, just sprinkle a tiny little bit. So like one packet lasts me like a week of that. But just to give it a little bit more flavor. But I drink that every single morning. And I really believe that that's one of the things that really helps to bring my system kind of fully into balance. There's some all natural cacao in there as well. So adding in a lot of those macro and micronutrients in there.
Very nice. All right. Well, thank you so much again. Like, really, this was a super valuable show. I appreciate all the wisdom you shared, and just your experience and just, walking the walk. Like I said earlier, it's much appreciated. So, before we sign off, one last time, where's the best place people can find you?
Yeah, so you can get in touch with me on Instagram, adam.carbary. You can connect with me through my website, embraceandexpand.com. Through that website, you can see my offerings. You can also book a free discovery call if you want to talk a little bit more about breathwork or coaching. With breathwork on, it's a foundation of my coaching practice. So whether you just want to do breathwork or if you want to do coaching, you're going to do breathwork anyways if you choose the coaching path with me, because that's just part of how I work with things. Because breathwork really helps to create clarity on what you actually need, not what you want. And that is, if I can leave one message, that is the power of breathwork, especially somatic breathwork. You never get what you want from a session, but you always get what you need. And that's really the important thing, because sometimes we think we want something, but it's not until we create space that we actually realize that's not truly the thing. It's something completely different. So it's very common for people to come to me in coaching, wanting coaching in a certain area. And then I take them through our first breathwork session. And then they're like, oh, actually, it's this thing.
Yeah.
And then we have more clarity on where we can run with that.
I love that. All right. Carl says this was a fantastic resource. Rocky says thank you. She hopes you come back soon. This was great. She says Adam answers questions so thoroughly. It's much appreciated. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with all of those sentiments. And so thank you again, Adam. It's been an honor to speak with you today and to learn about somatic breath work and how it can really benefit everybody. And yeah, I would definitely like to have you on for another show eventually and dive deeper into some of these topics. So thank you again.
Absolutely. Matt, it's been such a pleasure having this conversation today. And I really appreciate just the platform in which you've created of helping to educate people on the importance of wellness as a whole. Because it's not just one singular piece, but it is a bunch of those different changes that we can make to live more of a holistic life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. All right, guys. Thanks again for being here. Thanks for your questions and for your interaction today. Join us again next week. I think we'll have a show next week, same time, same place. And until then, always follow your raw intuition.